cruise ship vanished, then reappeared, hanging between cliffs where no ship should ever be. No distress call, no passengers, just silence pressed into rusted steel. A veteran Navy SEAL came looking for answers he wasn't sure he wanted to find. Beside him walked his dog, trained for war, guided by instincts no system could control. Every step closer revealed something darker than an accident, something designed to erase people. And when the truth surfaced, it wasn't strength that saved him. It was loyalty. If you're watching this, tell us where you're listening from, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to K9 Navy SEAL Stories. The first thing Ethan Mercer noticed about the North Shore was the light. It wasn't the harsh glare he remembered from deserts half a world away. This light was clean, pale gold, sliding across the surface of the lake as if it were testing the water rather than conquering it. Lake Superior stretched out beneath the cliffs like a sheet of hammered glass, turquoise near the rocks and darker where the depth swallowed color whole. Ethan stood at the edge of the trailhead, one boot resting on a flat stone, his weight balanced the way it always was. Ready, even when there was no obvious reason to be. At 43, his body still carried the quiet authority of someone shaped by years of disciplined violence. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, compact everywhere else. The olive field jacket hung comfortably on him, worn soft at the elbows, its pockets heavy with habit rather than necessity. Beneath it, a red and dark blue plaid shirt peeked out, the kind a man chose not for style, but because it held warmth and memory equally well. A breeze rolled in from the lake, lifting the scent of pine, damp stone, and cold water. It should have been peaceful. It wasn't. At Ethan's left side sat Valkyrie, Val to everyone who mattered. The German shepherd was 7 years old, her body lean and balanced, muscles taut beneath a black and tan coat that caught the light in subtle gradients. Her ears were upright, not rigid but alert, as if listening to something just below human hearing. Her eyes, dark, intelligent, unblinking, tracked the movement of gulls overhead, then returned to the cliffs. Val didn't sit because she was told to. She sat because she was waiting. Ethan reached down and rested 2 fingers briefly against the top of her head. She leaned into the touch for half a second, no more, then straightened again. Professional, focused, just like him. "You're early," a voice said behind him. Ethan turned. Mara Quinn stood a few steps back, one hand hooked casually into the strap of her ranger pack. She was in her late 30s, medium height, athletic without trying to be. Her brown hair was pulled into a low, practical braid, a few strands escaping to frame a face weathered by wind and responsibility rather than age. Her eyes were sharp, but not hard. The eyes of someone who noticed details because she cared, not because she wanted control. "Couldn't sleep," Ethan replied. Mara smiled faintly. "Funny? That's usually why people come here." Before Ethan could answer, another figure approached from the gravel lot. A stocky man in his early 50s, moving with the careful gait of someone who had learned to respect water the hard way. Deputy Ray Tolman's beard was gray at the edges, his sheriff's jacket faded from years of sun and spray. He smelled faintly of coffee and engine oil. "Morning," Ray said. His gaze dropped briefly to Val, then back to Ethan. "That your partner?" Ethan nodded. "She's better than me." Ray snorted. "That's usually how it goes." They exchanged the kind of look men shared when they both knew jokes were safer than truths. Mara got to the point. "We've got a missing person, mid-50s. Name's Paul Henriksen, local. Went hiking near Emerald Cut 2 days ago. Truck's still parked at the turnout. No sign of him past the first mile." Ethan followed her gaze toward the narrow waterway ahead. Emerald Cut. It wasn't a cut so much as a wound. A narrow channel where the lake had forced itself between 2 walls of stone, carving a passage so tight that sunlight only touched the water in slivers. And lodged deep within it, like a rib caught between clenched teeth, was the ship, the Bright Star. Even from this distance, the vessel dominated the landscape. Its rusted hull rose from the water at an unnatural angle, steel streaked with red-brown corrosion and veins of green moss. Vines crept along its sides as if the forest were slowly reclaiming the intruder. The upper decks, once white, were stained and cracked, windows dark like empty eye sockets. A relic, a monument, a mistake that refused to disappear. "Currents get weird in there," Ray said, reading Ethan's thoughts. "Blind spots, too. Sound bounces. Water pulls sideways before it pulls down." Ethan nodded. He was already reading the terrain, mapping angles and escape routes in his head, a habit he hadn't bothered to unlearn. "Val?" he said softly. The dog stood instantly. Ethan clipped the leash to her harness and crouched, placing a small cloth bag beneath her nose. The scent was old but usable. Paul Henriksen's jacket, recovered from his truck. Val inhaled once, then she froze. Her body tightened, head low, ears angled forward. She took 2 steps, stopped. Took another step, stopped again. This was not confusion. This was assessment. Ethan watched her closely. "Something wrong?" Mara asked. Val suddenly shifted direction, not toward the trail, toward the water, toward the Bright Star. Mara frowned. "That doesn't make sense. He was hiking." "Doesn't have to," Ethan said quietly. "Scent doesn't lie. It just tells the last honest story it knows." Val moved forward, pulling gently but insistently. Ethan followed, boots crunching over stone and leaf litter as the trail curved closer to the cut. They found the first sign near the waterline. A length of paracord lay half hidden beneath a rock, cleanly severed. Too clean. Ethan picked it up, turning it between his fingers. The cut edge was smooth, precise. "Knife," he said. "Sharp. No fraying." Mara's jaw tightened. A few feet away, Val stopped again. She lowered her head, sniffing the ground, then sat abruptly, alert. Ethan crouched and followed her gaze. A strip of silver tape clung to a piece of driftwood, fluttering slightly in the breeze. On it was a faded emblem, 4 points radiating from a central star. Ray exhaled slowly. "That's not fishing. Tape." "No," Ethan said. "It's industrial." Nearby, a faint sheen spread across the water's surface. Oil. Old, but not too old. Ethan straightened, his eyes drawn back to the ship. The Bright Star loomed silently, its bulk casting a shadow across the cut. Sunlight sparkled all around it, making the rust glow like dried blood. A temple, he thought, or a tomb. And then Val did something strange. She whined, softly. Not in fear, not in pain, in warning. Ethan felt it before he understood it. The subtle shift in the air, the way sound seemed to fold inward near the ship. His instincts stirred, old and unwelcome. He stepped closer to the water's edge. That's when he saw it. Something hung from the railing on the ship's port side, swaying gently with the motion of the water. Small, metallic, a dog tag. Ethan's chest tightened. He moved without thinking, one hand lifting. Val lunged forward, pressing her body hard against his leg. She let out a low, pleading sound, her eyes locked on his hand. "Don't." Ethan froze. For a long moment, no one spoke. The lake lapped quietly against stone. A gull cried somewhere overhead. Slowly, Ethan lowered his hand. Val relaxed, just a fraction, but did not move away. Ethan stared at the dog tag, still swinging, still waiting. The light on the water was beautiful. The shadow of steel was not. And something inside the Bright Star was watching. No one touched the dog tag. They stood there in the thin hush between waves, sunlight trembling across the water, the rusted bulk of the Bright Star breathing its cold shadow into the cut. The tag swayed gently from the railing, catching the light just enough to remind Ethan Mercer that metal could still gleam long after purpose had died. Ethan took a slow step back from the edge. Val remained pressed against his leg, her body firm, deliberate. She wasn't afraid. Fear had a different scent, a different tension. This was warning, measured, intentional. Her dark eyes flicked once toward the ship and then back to him, as if to say, "You see it now." Good. Mara Quinn exhaled, rubbing her gloved hands together. "That's not normal, is it?" "No," Ethan said. His voice was steady, but something had tightened behind his ribs. "It's bait." Ray Tolman squinted up at the dog tag, then at Ethan. "Looks personal." "It's meant to," Ethan replied. He reached into his snub jacket pocket and pulled out a small flashlight, angling the beam without stepping closer. The light slid over the metal, illuminating the stamped letters. HAWK. Mara stiffened. "That's my call sign," Ethan finished. Or what used to be. He crouched a few feet back, careful not to break Val's contact with him. Even from here, he could see it. The tiny inconsistencies. The font was close, but not exact. The edges too sharp, too new. Someone had aged it, but not well enough. "They wanted me to recognize it," Ethan said, "and they wanted me angry enough to forget how to look." Ray let out a low whistle. "So this missing guy, Paul, he wasn't the target?" Ethan's gaze never left the ship. Not the primary one. A sudden burst of laughter echoed down the trail behind them. They all turned. 3 figures were picking their way over the rocks. 2 men and a woman, all in their 20s, bundled in mismatched jackets and beanies, cameras slung around their necks. One of them held a handheld gimbal, already filming, his grin wide and careless. "Dude, this is sick," the taller one said. "This is exactly like those abandoned cruise ship vids." Mara's shoulders dropped an inch. Then she straightened, professional irritation snapping into place. "Hey, you're not supposed to be past the barricade." The woman, short, pale, with dyed blonde hair peeking from under her hat, raised her hands. "Sorry, we didn't see any signs." "There were signs," Mara said, "and this area is restricted." The shorter guy laughed nervously. "We'll just grab a quick shot and go." Ethan watched them with a distant calm. He'd seen this kind of carelessness before. Not malicious, just blind to consequence. Val's ears flattened slightly as the group stepped closer, her nose twitching. Then it happened. A sharp clack echoed from within the Bright Star. Not loud, not dramatic, but final. Every sound in the cut seemed to pause. The vlogger with the camera stopped mid-step. You guys hear that?" Ray's hand dropped instinctively to his belt. "Everyone freeze." Mara's eyes locked on the ship. "That came from inside." Ethan didn't move. He listened. Metal remembered sound. It carried it, bent it, made it lie about distance. But that noise wasn't a gull or loose rigging. It was a door. Or something like one. Val inhaled sharply. Her head snapped toward the ship, then to the water, then back again, processing layers of information too fast for words. Her body angled slightly sideways, weight shifting to her hind legs. Not aggression. Tracking. "Get them out of here," Ethan said quietly to Mara. She didn't argue. Ray ushered the vloggers back up the trail, his voice firm but calm. The tall one kept looking over his shoulder, curiosity warring with fear. As soon as they were gone, the cut felt narrower. "Okay," Mara said once the trail was clear. "Someone was in there." "Or just left," Ray added. Ethan nodded. "Either way, They wanted us to hear it. Val moved again. She stepped toward the waterline, nose low, then paused. Her nostrils flared. She sneezed once, hard, shaking her head. Ethan felt it immediately. "What is it?" Mara asked. "Ammonia," Ethan said. "Or something close. They're trying to burn scent." Val snorted again, irritated, then circled, working outward in widening arcs. Her tail was stiff now, her movements sharper. Ray frowned. "That's deliberate." "Yes," Ethan said. "And expensive." Mara folded her arms. "So, not a lone hiker?" "No," Ethan said. "This is organized." The realization settled heavily between them. Ethan stepped back from the edge and leaned against a boulder, forcing himself to breathe. He hated this part. The moment when instinct screamed run toward and discipline had to answer slow down. The dog tag swung gently above the water. He looked at Val. She wasn't watching the tag. She was watching the shadow beneath the ship. Something moved there. Not a body, not a shape. Just a disturbance in pattern. Water shifted where it shouldn't have. Ray followed his gaze. "That current. See how straight it is?" Ethan nodded. Boat ran tight to the wall. Electric motor, maybe. Minimal wake. Mara's voice dropped. "You're saying someone came and went while we were standing right here?" "Yes." Silence again. Ethan pushed off the rock. "They're not hiding," he said. "They're announcing." "And the message?" Mara asked. Ethan looked once more at the dog tag. "That I was expected," he said, and remembered. Val suddenly stopped moving. She stood rigid, head turned slightly toward the ship, ears angled forward, not alert, not sit, listening. Ethan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Val?" he murmured. She didn't look at him. Then, faintly, so faint it could have been imagination, a voice drifted from the dark recesses of the bright star. "Good girl." Mara's breath caught. The voice was calm, familiar, too close. And then it spoke again. "Hawk." Val turned her head slowly toward Ethan, as if checking that he was still there. Ethan didn't answer the voice, but somewhere deep inside, something old and buried had just woken up. Crossing onto the bright star felt less like boarding a ship and more like stepping into a memory that refused to stay buried. Sunlight still ruled the open deck. It glinted off warped railings and broken windows, turning rust into something almost beautiful. The air outside was sharp and clean, carrying pine and cold water. But the moment Ethan Mercer moved past the threshold, past the skeletal doorway where paint had peeled away in Washma's long dead curls, the temperature dropped. Not cold exactly, hollow. The corridor swallowed sound. Each step echoed back a half-beat too late, metal remembering them after they passed. Ethan's posture shifted without conscious thought. His shoulders squared, his steps shortened. He counted angles, distances, blind corners. Years of training slid over him like an old coat he never really took off. Val padded in beside him, claws clicking softly on steel. At 7 years old, she moved with the economy of a veteran. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Her ears were upright, tracking the corridor ahead, behind, above. Her black and tan coat brushed rust flakes loose with each step, and her tail stayed low, controlled. Mara Quinn followed a few feet back, her breath fogging faintly in the cooler air. She glanced around with a ranger's eye, reading decay and danger instead of tactics. The inside of the ship unsettled her, not because it was dark, but because it felt used. Ray Tolman remained near the entrance, one hand resting on the bulkhead. "I'll hold the line here," he said quietly. "Radio if you need me." Ethan nodded once. He appreciated Ray's instincts. Too many people thought courage meant pushing forward. Experience taught otherwise. They moved deeper. Val slowed near an intersection where two corridors crossed. She lowered her head, nostrils flaring. Her body tensed. Not stiff, but alert in a way Ethan recognized immediately. Fear. Not fresh panic, not terror. This was older, heavier. Fear that had lingered, soaked into surfaces. "Show me," Ethan murmured. Val turned left, stopping in front of a steel door that had been secured with a temporary chain and padlock, newer than everything else around it. The metal shone faintly beneath grime. Mara frowned. "That wasn't here last year." Ethan crouched, inspecting the lock. Scratches around the clasp. Careless, but fast. He broke it cleanly. The door creaked open to reveal a small storage compartment. Inside, the air smelled stale, but not abandoned. A stack of bottled water sat against the wall. Protein bars, a flashlight, coiled rope, a battery pack still warm to the touch. Someone had been living here. "Paul?" Mara called softly, though she already knew the answer. Val stepped inside, sniffing carefully, then sat, alert. Ethan scanned the room. No blood, no signs of a struggle. But the fear was real and recent. "He was here," Ethan said. But he wasn't alone. They moved on, deeper into the ship. The corridor narrowed, the ceilings lowering as if the vessel itself were bowing under the weight of years. Ethan marked his path unconsciously. Scratches on the wall, a bent handrail, a loose panel. He tested the acoustics with a quiet tap of his knuckle. The sound traveled farther than it should have. Metal lied. Val suddenly sneezed. Once. Hard. She shook her head, snorting, then veered off course for a moment, her steps uncertain. Ethan felt it immediately. "They burned scent," he said. Mara's jaw tightened. "Ammonia?" "Or something close," Ethan replied. "Strong enough to disrupt, not strong enough to erase." Val circled, irritated, then paused. She closed her eyes for half a second, long enough to recalibrate, then lifted her head and moved again, this time with renewed certainty. She stopped at a narrow stairwell leading down. But before they descended, something caught Ethan's eye. A hatch set into the wall, partially concealed behind a collapsed panel, too neat to be accidental. He pulled it open. Inside was a makeshift compartment, carefully arranged. A handheld radio, a notebook wrapped in plastic, and a photograph. Ethan picked up the photo. It showed him standing near the trailhead, taken from above, from the cliffs across the cut. The angle was perfect. Professional. Mara leaned in, her face paling. "That was today," Ethan nodded. "Which means someone knew I'd be here." The notebook contained coordinates, numbers and symbols written in a tight, deliberate hand. Not random. Not amateur. Mara crossed her arms. "Only one person outside law enforcement knew your schedule." Ethan didn't answer, but the name surfaced anyway. Grange. The thought sat badly with him, like grit between teeth. Val let out a low sound. Not a growl, a warning. She stood at the top of the stairwell now, staring down into darkness that swallowed light after only a few steps. Her ears angled forward, but her body stayed back, as if measuring distance. Ethan joined her, peering down. The air below was colder, damper. It carried the faint smell of water, and something else. Human, but altered. "Someone went down there recently," Mara said. "Yes," Ethan replied, "and they wanted to be heard." They descended carefully, steps slow, controlled. The stairs vibrated under their weight, metal singing softly. About halfway down, Val stopped. She turned her head, not toward the darkness, but toward Ethan. Her eyes met his. It was a look Ethan knew too well. The look she'd given him once, years ago, when everything had gone wrong and he hadn't wanted to see it. A look that said, "Pay attention. This matters." Ethan's chest tightened. This was the re-hooking moment. The quiet, internal one. Not fear, not shock, recognition. Val wasn't just tracking a stranger, she was tracking him. The idea settled slowly, heavily. Someone had threaded Ethan's presence into the trail itself. His scent, his history. They reached the bottom of the stairwell. The space opened into a wider compartment, once part of the engine room. Water pooled along the edges, reflecting warped beams like broken mirrors. Tools lay scattered, deliberately placed rather than abandoned. And then the voice came. Not loud, not threatening, just precise. "You owe Miles." Ethan froze. The name struck like a physical blow. His breath caught, just enough to be noticeable to Val. She moved closer, her shoulder brushing his leg. Mara turned sharply. "Who's there?" Silence answered. But it wasn't empty silence. It was the kind that listened back. Ethan swallowed. Miles Keene. A name he hadn't spoken aloud in years, a promise he hadn't kept. He forced himself to breathe, grounding in the present. The smell of rust, the cold water, the weight of Val beside him. "Who are you?" Ethan said, his voice steady again. No reply, just the drip of water. Somewhere above them, metal shifted softly, as if the bright star itself were settling around them. Val lifted her head, ears straining, eyes locked on the shadows ahead. Whatever had spoken was gone, or close enough to be dangerous. And the Temple of Rust had just claimed another secret. They found him where the ship narrowed, where rusted steel folded inward, like ribs closing around a heart. Ethan noticed the movement first. Not Val for once. A shape at the edge of his peripheral vision, just beyond a beam of filtered light slipping through a cracked vent. He raised his hand slightly, the signal subtle and automatic. Val froze. The man stepped out slowly, palms open, breathing hard in a way that looked rehearsed but not entirely fake. "I don't want any trouble," he said. His voice was hoarse, scraped raw by cold air and nerves. "I'm just lost." He was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s. Medium height, leaned to the point of being wiry. His face was narrow, cheekbones sharp, with a 3-day stubble that didn't quite hide a faint scar running from the corner of his mouth toward his jaw. Dark hair, damp with sweat, clung to his forehead beneath a faded knit cap. His jacket was a weatherproof shell, good quality, scuffed but functional. Not the gear of a tourist, not quite military either. Caleb Finch. That was the name on the ID he produced with shaking fingers. "I'm a surveyor," he said quickly, holding the card out just far enough to be seen, not close enough to be grabbed. "Freelance. I was mapping shoreline erosion for a private client. Boat clipped a rock. I swam. Thought I could wait it out in here." Mara stepped forward first. She always did. Her voice softened, instincts wired toward rescue before suspicion. "Are you hurt?" Caleb shook his head. "Just cold and tired." Ethan stayed where he was. Val moved between them, not lunging, not growling, just standing, squarely, deliberately, her body forming a barrier between Ethan and the stranger. Her ears were upright, her gaze locked on Caleb's chest, not his face. She was reading breath, heartbeat, tension. Caleb noticed. A flicker of something crossed his expression. Interest, maybe even admiration. "She's disciplined," he said. "Military trained?" Ethan didn't answer. Caleb shifted his weight, trying to look casual. "I didn't expect company, especially not this deep in." Mara knelt slightly, bringing herself closer to Caleb's eye level without crowding him. "We're looking for someone who went missing. A hiker." Caleb's brow furrowed convincingly. "I haven't seen anyone." Val's tail stiffened. Ethan watched closely. Caleb's eyes flicked, just once, to the dog. then back to Ethan. And then he smiled. Not wide, not friendly, knowing. Metal carries sound strangely in places like this, Caleb said. Hard to sleep when it echoes, isn't it? The words landed softly, too softly. Ethan felt the reaction before he could stop it. A tightening in his shoulders, a micro pause in his breathing. Caleb saw it. Mara didn't. Sleep? She asked. Caleb shrugged. I get insomnia when I'm stressed. Guess that's normal. Ethan stepped forward half a pace. Val did not. Move. Where did you say your boat hit? Ethan asked. Caleb gestured vaguely. Near the cut. Hard to tell exactly. Ray's voice crackled over the radio from above. Ethan, I'm seeing something odd topside. Mara's head snapped up. What kind of odd? Rope marks, Ray said. On a railing near the bridge, fresh. Ethan's jaw set. He looked back at Caleb. Take off your gloves, Ethan said. Caleb hesitated, just long enough to matter. Then did as he was told. Dark bruises ringed his wrists. Not scrapes, not abrasions from swimming. Pressure marks, restraints. Mara inhaled sharply. Caleb, who tied you up? Caleb's gaze dropped. His shoulders slumped, as if the truth weighed more than the lie. It's not what you think. Ray's voice cut in again. These aren't panic marks. Whoever tied him knew what they were doing. Val let out a low, steady sound. Not a growl, but a warning vibration that Ethan felt through the soles of his boots. Caleb swallowed. I didn't come here to hurt anyone. That wasn't the question, Ethan said. For a moment, it felt like the truth might surface. Then it slipped away. A distant clang echoed through the ship. Metal on metal. Not close, but moving. Ethan turned instinctively toward the sound. That was the mistake. It didn't take violence. It didn't take speed. It took knowledge. Somewhere above them, a figure moved through the bright star with the confidence of someone who had walked her corridors before. They knew which ladders didn't creak, which doors caught sound, which turns swallowed footsteps. By the time Ethan realized what was happening, it was already over. Ray's voice came through the radio again, sharp and urgent. Ethan, someone just passed the bridge. They're heading out. Stay on them, Ethan said, already moving. But when they reached the upper deck, the space was empty. The door to the captain's cabin hung open. Inside, drawers had been opened with surgical efficiency. Nothing smashed, nothing scattered. The Pelican case was gone. The black, watertight case that held the photos, the notes, the radio logs, the fragile spine of their evidence. Mara stared at the empty spot where it had been. No. No, no. Ethan crouched, scanning the floor. Something silver caught the light. A strip of industrial tape lay pressed flat against the steel, deliberately placed. On it, the same four-pointed star. A signature. They were never running, Ethan said quietly. They were timing us. Mara's hands curled into fists. Without that case, we have nothing solid. No chain of custody, no proof. Ray joined them, breathless. Boat took off low and tight along the wall. I lost visual in seconds. Ethan straightened slowly. Val had moved to the railing. She stood there, still as stone, eyes fixed on the water below. The surface rippled, just slightly. A straight line cut through the turquoise, closer than before. Mara whispered, If we can't prove this, they'll close it, Ethan finished. Fast. Val's ears tilted forward. Not toward the ship, toward the lake. Whatever was watching them wasn't finished. They didn't return to the Bright Star that night. The ship stayed where it was, wedged between stone and water like a scar the land refused to heal. But the people stepped away from it. carrying something heavier than evidence loss. They carried failure. And for Ethan Mercer, failure had a taste he knew too well. The ranger station parking lot was quiet, washed in the pale blue of early evening. Ethan sat on the open tailgate of his truck, elbows on his knees, hands clasped loosely as if he were afraid of clenching them too hard. The olive field jacket hung open now, unbuttoned, making him look less like a man on duty and more like someone who had forgotten why he came. Val lay at his feet. She wasn't asleep. Her head rested on her paws, ears half raised, eyes tracking him from below. The German shepherd's body was relaxed, but not disengaged, like a sentry at rest, still counting breaths. Her coat was dusty with rust flakes and lake grit, black and tan dulled by the day's work. She had earned her quiet. Ethan stared at the ground. He kept replaying it, not the theft of the Pelican case, but the moment before it. The choice. The instinct to turn toward movement instead of anchoring the room. A fraction of a second where he'd trusted experience instead of suspicion. You should have known better. The thought came uninvited, sharp and familiar. He dragged a hand over his face, fingers catching in his beard. The motion revealed the faint tremor he usually kept buried. It wasn't fear. It was something older, heavier. Survivor's guilt didn't scream. It waited. Val shifted, stood, and placed her head gently against his knee. Ethan closed his eyes. The memory came anyway. It had been raining that night, hard. The kind of rain that flattened sound and turned the world into a tunnel. Ethan had been sitting on the floor, back against a wall, lungs refusing to cooperate. Every breath felt like it stopped halfway in, caught on something invisible. His vision tunneled. His hands shook, useless. Get up, he'd told himself. Move. Do something. But his body didn't listen. Val, then younger, leaner, still earning her place, had approached without command. She didn't bark, didn't paw. She simply pressed her head against his chest and stayed there, warm and solid, forcing contact. Ethan remembered the weight of her, the rhythm of her breathing, in, out. He'd matched it without realizing. That night, she hadn't been a K9, she'd been a lifeline. Ethan? Mara Quinn's voice cut gently into the present. She stood a few feet away, hands tucked into the pockets of her ranger jacket. The set of her shoulders was different now, tenser, weighed down by something she hadn't wanted to bring with her. They're pushing, she said. Ethan opened his eyes. Who? Sheriff Dana Klein. He exhaled slowly. Dana Klein was a fixture in the county, late 50s, tall, iron-gray hair, cropped close, jaw always set as if bracing against complaint. He had the look of a man who had spent decades smoothing chaos into reports. A man who believed order mattered more than truth, because truth was messy and scared tourists away. He wants this wrapped up, Mara continued. Quickly, quietly. Ethan didn't look surprised. Because of the ship. And the season, Mara said. Word of a criminal investigation near Emerald Cut would tank summer traffic. He says there's no concrete evidence of foul play. Because it was stolen, Ethan said. Mara nodded. And because if I keep pushing without it, he'll pull me off the case. Officially. Val lifted her head at the change in tone. Mara glanced down at the dog, then back at Ethan. I'm not saying I agree with him. I know, Ethan said. But he outranks you. Yes, her jaw tightened. And he knows it. Silence settled between them, thick but not hostile. The kind shared by people who wanted the same thing and were being told they couldn't have it. A car pulled into the lot. Ethan looked up as a compact gray sedan rolled to a stop nearby. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out, moving with quick, economical confidence. June Park. She was in her early 30s, average height, slim build, wearing a dark windbreaker and jeans that had seen more server rooms than Wilderness. Her black hair was pulled back into a low ponytail, wisps escaping to frame a face defined more by focus than softness. She wore rectangular glasses, the kind that slid down her nose when she forgot to blink. June glanced around, took in Ethan, Mara, Val, then offered a small nod. "You must be Mercer." Ethan stood. "That's me." She looked at Val next, curiosity flickering across her face. "And you must be the reason half the evidence didn't get contaminated." Val stared back, unimpressed. June smiled faintly. "I like her." They moved to the tailgate, where June opened her laptop and set it down carefully, shielding the screen from glare. "I've been going through the scraps," she said. "Metadata from the photo you found, the notebook scans, radio frequency logs from the handheld unit you recovered." "And?" Mara asked. June tapped a few keys, pulling up a map overlaid with coordinates and symbols. "The writing isn't random. It's shorthand. Maritime salvage shorthand." Ethan leaned in. June pointed. "This symbol here looks like a broken square with a slash. That's used to mark decommissioned salvage yards. This cluster lines up with a private site on the north arm of the lake." Mara frowned. "Private how?" June met her eyes. "Owned by Grange Maritime." The name settled like dust after an explosion. Ethan straightened slowly. "So, they didn't just know I was coming," he said. "They built the path." "Yes," June replied, "and they wanted you to see it." Val suddenly stood. She moved away from the group, circling the truck once, nose low. Her behavior changed. More deliberate, more intent. She stopped near the driver's side door, sniffed, then moved toward the rear window. Ethan watched her closely. "Val?" he said softly. She didn't respond. She lifted onto her hind legs, placing her paws briefly against the glass, then dropped back down and sat, alert. Ethan stepped closer. There, on the glass, barely visible unless the light hit it just right, was a strip of silver. Industrial tape. The four-pointed star stamped faintly at one edge. Mara's breath caught. "They were here." June swallowed. "Recently?" Ethan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lake. He peeled the tape back slowly. Written on the inside, in neat block letters, "Dawn. Emerald cut. Come alone." Val looked up at him. Not afraid, not warning, watching. Ethan closed his hand around the tape. Whoever was orchestrating this didn't want chaos. They wanted him. Ethan left before the sun cleared the ridge. He moved quietly through the cabin, the floorboards cool beneath his boots, the world holding its breath the way it did before weather changed. He told himself he was prepared for the cold logic of what he was about to do. That he was choosing action over avoidance, motion over paralysis. He did not tell himself he would go alone. Val was already awake. She stood by the door, alert and composed. Her black and tan coat catching the faint pre-dawn light like burnished bronze. At 7, she carried herself with the steady confidence of a partner who had seen enough to know when words were useless. Her ears were forward, her tail still. When Ethan reached for the handle, she stepped closer. "No," he murmured, more plea than command. Val did not move. Behind him, Mara Quinn leaned against the kitchen counter, arms folded, hair still damp from a hurried shower. Her ranger jacket was on. Her expression wasn't angry so much as braced. "You're not doing this alone," she said. Ethan didn't turn. "I have to." "I know why you want to," Mara replied. "That's not the same thing." Val pressed her shoulder lightly against Ethan's leg. Contact without force, insistence without challenge. He closed his eyes for a beat. This wasn't defiance. It was alignment. "She stays," he said finally. "Or I don't go." Mara searched his face, reading the decision already settled there. "Then don't die trying to prove something," she said. "Go, because you're done running." Ethan nodded once. He didn't trust himself to speak. The north woke in shades of blue. Mist lifted off the lake in thin ribbons, the air sharp and clean, carrying pine and cold water. As the trail opened toward Emerald Cut, the Bright Star emerged from the haze. Massive, rusted, ancient. In the newborn light, she looked less like a wreck and more like a forgotten god, stranded between cliff and current. Ethan felt the pull immediately. Not fear. Recognition. They moved carefully, Ethan scanning angles, Val ranging ahead and back, checking wind, water, metal. The plan, if there had ever been one, was simple. Observe, retrieve, survive. The opposition favored clean tactics. No mess, no witnesses. If something went wrong, it would look like weather or age or human error. A floor giving way, a railing snapping, a fall no one could argue with. Val stopped short. She sneezed once, then twice, hard enough to shake her head. Ethan smelled it a half-second later. Ammonia. Faint but deliberate. "They're scrubbing," he whispered. Val adjusted, widening her arc, moving with irritated focus. She retracked by memory as much as nose now, by pattern, by the logic of movement. Ethan followed her lead, boots light, breath controlled. Inside, the ship answered with its familiar deceit. Metal echoed and folded sound, turning distance into illusion. Light fractured through broken windows and vents, painting the corridors in slats of pale gold. Then it happened. A sudden ring, metal on metal, sharp and high, ricocheting down the passage. Ethan's chest locked. The sound dragged him backward through years he'd trained to outpace. The clang of steel in confined spaces. The way noise multiplied when panic followed it. His breath stalled, vision narrowing. Val felt it before he named it. She spun and snapped gently at the cuff of his sleeve. Not aggressive, not playful. A tug. Then another. Her eyes met his, steady and present. "Here," they said. No. Ethan forced air into his lungs. In, out. He followed the rhythm she offered, grounding in the pressure of her jaw on his fabric, the warmth of her shoulder against his knee. The moment passed. "Good," he whispered, more to himself than to her. They moved on. Val led him to a narrow maintenance corridor where the wind sang through a grated vent. She stopped, pawing lightly at the metal seam. Ethan crouched, fingers probing the edge. There, wedged deep inside the vent housing, was a slim memory card taped flat, shielded from casual sight. No Pelican case, no labels, just a contingency. Ethan eased it free and slid it into his recorder. The device whirred softly, then clicked. A voice crackled to life. Miles. Older than Ethan remembered. Thinner, but unmistakable. "If you're hearing this, something already went wrong." Ethan swallowed. The file skipped, clipped, as if cut midstream and stitched back together. "I don't have much time. They're closer than they think. Hawk!" The audio glitched. "Don't trust Gur—" A burst of static swallowed the rest, then a different sound. Breath, panic. Miles shouting, "Hawk, don't!" The recording cut hard. Ethan stared at the device, pulse hammering. A slow clap echoed behind him. Once. Then a voice, calm and familiar in its cadence. "You always do arrive late." Ethan turned. A man stood on the upper deck, framed by the pale morning light. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in neutral outdoor gear that blended seamlessly with stone and rust. His hair was dark, close-cropped, his beard neatly trimmed. His face held the kind of symmetry that read as trustworthy until you looked closer. until you noticed the eyes. They were assessing, measuring. "You shouldn't be here," the man continued, tone almost conversational. "But you never were good at following instructions." Val stepped forward, placing herself squarely between Ethan and the stranger. Her body went taut. Not aggressive, but ready. Her gaze never left his hands. The man smiled faintly. "Still working with dogs?" he said. "Figures." Ethan's voice was level. "You knew Miles." The man tilted his head. "We crossed paths." "You killed him." A pause. Consideration. "I let him make his choices." Ethan felt the anger rise, not explosive, but focused. Clean. "You orchestrated this," he said. "The bait. The blind spots. The clean exits." "Yes," the man replied. "Because chaos is noisy, and noise brings attention." Val growled low, a warning that vibrated in Ethan's bones. The man raised his hand slightly. "Easy. I'm not here for violence." "Then why are you here?" Ethan asked. "To see if you'd listen," the man said. "You never did." The wind shifted. The lake below cut a straight, deliberate line through the water. Val's ears flicked. Ethan tightened his grip on the recorder. Whatever came next, dawn had already chosen its witness. The truth didn't arrive all at once. It never did. It came in fragments, data points, silences, polite smiles. And only later did Ethan Mercer understand that this, too, was a tactic. Not to overwhelm him, but to make him doubt which piece mattered most. June Park sat hunched over her laptop at the ranger station, sleeves rolled up, eyes bloodshot but sharp. The early light through the windows caught on her glasses as code scrolled past like tide lines. "I don't think Grar is a person," she said at last. Mara Quinn looked up from her coffee. "You're saying it's not Grange?" "I'm saying it's bigger than one man," June replied. She rotated the screen toward them. A map filled the display, shorelines, grids, faded industrial labels. "See this? Greystone Route. Decommissioned salvage corridor. It predates Grange Maritime, but they inherited the permits." Ethan leaned in, Val at his side. "Greystone," he repeated. June nodded. The shorthand in Miles's file points here. Storage sites, temporary drop zones. Clean logistics. If something went wrong, it disappeared into paperwork. "So, don't trust Gur." "Wasn't a warning about a person," Mara said slowly. "It was about a system." "Yes," June said, "and systems don't panic. They adapt." The door opened before anyone could respond. Sheriff Dana Klein stepped in, posture rigid, expression already carved into authority. He was followed by a man Ethan hadn't seen in person before, but recognized instantly. Elliot Grange moved like someone accustomed to being welcomed. Mid-50s, tall, silver at the temples, tailored coat worn open as if to signal nothing to hide. His face held a practiced warmth, eyes kind, smile restrained, the sort that never reached too far. He looked like a man who funded museums and chaired boards, a man who shook hands slowly and remembered names. "Ethan," Grange said, extending a hand. "I'm glad we finally meet." Ethan didn't take it. Val didn't growl, but she shifted, placing herself slightly forward, her body angled protectively. Grange noticed. His smile flickered, then recovered. Sheriff Klein cleared his throat. "We're closing this as a tragic accident," he said. "No evidence of criminal wrongdoing." Mara stiffened. "With respect, sir, this is about the community," Klein cut in. "Tourism, jobs." Grange nodded sympathetically. "And healing," he added. "We all want closure." Ethan watched him closely. The cadence, the pauses. This wasn't a man who rushed outcomes. This was someone who let others exhaust themselves. "We're willing to cooperate," Grange continued. Share resources, fund safety improvements, whatever helps everyone move forward. Ethan felt the shape of it then, the trap beneath the courtesy. They weren't trying to arrest him. They were trying to discredit him. If Ethan pushed without proof, if he defied the closure narrative, he would look unstable. A former operator chasing ghosts. A handler projecting trauma onto a case. And when his credibility went, his eyes dropped to Val. "So would hers," he said quietly. Grange's gaze followed his. For the briefest moment, something sharpened there. Interest. Calculation. "We all have attachments," Grange said. "But sometimes, for the greater good, we must let go." Val's ears flattened. Ethan's jaw tightened. The meeting ended politely. Too politely. When they were gone, the room felt smaller. "They're counting on you breaking," Mara said. Ethan nodded. Or choosing wrong. They returned to the lake that afternoon, not to search, but because Val insisted. She moved with purpose now, less like she was tracking a scent, a janiscent, and more like she was following a memory. Ethan trusted that difference. He followed her along the familiar cut, the bright star looming once more between cliff and water. The ship was quiet. Too quiet. Val led him to a narrow maintenance shaft they'd passed before. She stopped, sniffed once, then pawed lightly at a loose panel. Ethan eased it open. Inside was a photograph. A Polaroid. Fresh, edges still sharp. His breath caught. It showed Val standing on the bright star's deck, morning light haloing her silhouette. Her head was lifted, eyes locked straight into the lens. Calm, aware. Beneath the image, written in careful ink, "It remembers you. Do you remember it?" Ethan's hands trembled. "Who took this?" Mara whispered behind him. June swallowed. "When?" Val looked up at Ethan, searching his face. The implications stacked fast and heavy. Someone had been close enough to photograph her, close enough not to trigger alarm, close enough to want her seen. "They're not threatening her," Ethan said slowly. "They're claiming influence." A re-hooking realization settled over him. Not fear, but awe edged with dread. They believed Val was the key, not leverage, destiny. The lake shifted. Ethan turned as a faint, straight ripple cut across the water beyond the cut. Not a wake fleeing. Not a trace to follow. A deliberate pass. A promise. Val's ears tilted toward it, her body still, eyes bright with something like recognition. Ethan closed his fingers around the Polaroid. The system had made its move. Now it was waiting. Sometimes miracles don't arrive as thunder or light from the sky. Sometimes they arrive quietly, through loyalty that never wavers, through instincts that protect us when our own minds are tired, through a presence that stays when everything else walks away. In this story, the miracle was not strength, nor courage, nor victory. It was connection. A reminder that God often sends his protection through unexpected forms, through companionship, through silence, through beings who cannot speak, but understand us more deeply than words ever could. In our daily lives, we may not face rusted ships or hidden enemies, but we all walk through moments of doubt, loss, and unseen battles. And just like Ethan, we are rarely meant to walk them alone. God places signs along our path, people, moments, and sometimes even animals, to guide us back when we are close to losing ourselves. If this story touched something in you, take a moment to reflect on what anchors you. Who or what has God placed in your life to keep you steady? If you found meaning here, please share this story with someone who might need it. Leave a comment below and tell us what stayed with you. And if you want more stories of loyalty, faith, and the unseen bonds between humans and dogs, consider subscribing to this channel. May God bless you, protect you, and walk beside you, especially in the moments when the path feels unclear.